Good morning, good morning, everybody. This is Abby. I'm from Innovia Consulting. I just want to welcome you to our joint webinar with Avalara this morning. I know we're all really excited, looking forward to it. We're going to be talking about exemption certificate and sales tax automation in Dynamics NAV. We've had a lot of people sign up for this. We're really excited to be a partner with Avalara. We're working together to bring you today's webinar. And it's really going to be to share how Avalara makes sales tax less taxing and more relaxing. I think that's a really cute tagline there. So without further delay, I'm going to introduce you guys to today's presenter. She's our Avalara Regional Sales Manager, Maria. And Maria has been with Avalara for 2 years, helping organizations improve efficiencies by moving from traditional manual processes to automation using technology. So Maria, we hand it over right to you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kalei and Abby. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Great to be here. And hopefully this will be a fun, interesting webinar. We do try to make sales tax more relaxing and more fun. So let's get started. We know it's not something that everyone wants to talk about. So let's talk about how technology can help you. So what I had planned for today was to talk a little bit about the challenges of manually managing your sales tax compliance and how technology can help you. As Kalei mentioned, if you do have questions, please do ask those as we go along. They can let me know, and I'm happy to answer them as we go along. I want to make sure that you get out of this session what you came on to learn today. So feel free to reach out at any time. So let's start with some of the challenges of sales tax compliance. The basics are that sales tax compliance is a statutory requirement. Companies are always at risk. And audits are going to happen. Sales tax audits are going to happen. Manually managing this process is very labor intensive, and anything that's labor intensive can involve a lot of human errors, potential inaccuracies, and it's just expensive. Paying staff to do things that can be done by technology can be really taxing on an organization. Also, the sales tax compliance is 100% not a revenue generating activity. Most of my customers, when I talk with CFOs all the time, they'll say, yeah, I have a whole lot of things I would love my finance staff to be doing that's not filling out forms, running reports and filling out forms just to pay the government. So the first thing to note, and we're going to be talking much about exemption certificates today because that's generally where manufacturers, those who use NAV, really are more heavily using exemption certificates than they are charging sales tax. But just for a minute, if you are charging sales tax in your organization, traditionally we've used zip codes. And so the first thing I want to put out there is that zip codes are how our country is divided up for U.S. mail. They have absolutely nothing to do with taxing jurisdictions. They're really just the only instrument, the only way we know how to divide up our country and look something up, but literally taxing jurisdictions don't pay any attention to zip codes. So if you are using zip codes for sales tax rates, you're not getting the right rate. And just a quick demonstration of that, you can see there's several counties here in Colorado, or several cities, excuse me, and then it's counties, then we'll zoom into these cities here. And if we zoom in even farther, you can see that the zip codes do not equal the taxing jurisdictions. The colors on my screen here are actually the taxing jurisdictions. So just within this circle where we've zoomed in, all of these sales tax rates might apply within that. And if we drill down in even further into 80111, you can see that all of these tax rates apply. So they really have nothing to do with zip codes. And not only that, but there are 12,000 taxing jurisdictions around our country and thousands of laws. There are jurisdictional rates that change. There are sales tax holidays, especially around back to school time. Different jurisdictions change their boundaries. Things are always changing. I don't really know how a business is supposed to keep up with this manually. So not only are the rates different, but in managing sales tax compliance, you have to know a lot about your products and services and how they might be managed. If you're selling software or digital goods or services, those top three there, those can vary greatly in how they are taxed from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And just like the rates, this is an ever-changing landscape. states have figured out that they can get a lot more money by taxing things. So things like services that traditionally were not taxed or not taxable are now becoming taxable, or certain types of services. We get notifications here at Avalara all the time about different rules, different states and jurisdictions that have made changes and different rules that might apply. Clothing, supplements, food products. If you're in an industry that sells any of these items, you have a lot of work to do to keep up with these product and service exemptions. Just by a quick way of example, I love this example, things that you might not know can be taxable or not taxable depending on how they're made up or how they're used. So in this case, a Milky Way bar is made with milk chocolate and has flour, and so that is not taxable. But a dark chocolate bar doesn't have flour. It actually can be or is taxable in most jurisdictions. So things can look very, very much the same or act very much the same, but be taxed or not taxed based on whatever that jurisdiction decided to do and how to tax those. So these are things that technology can keep up with for you without your staff having to worry about them. There's also sourcing rules. So different jurisdictions have different rules. Some, like these states here on the left in Arizona, they might be origin-based for products, but then they're destination-based for services. So you charge the sales tax rate at your shop in Ohio when you sell something, but yet when you send someone out to a plant in Cleveland to do some services, you have to charge the sales tax rate at that plant in Cleveland as opposed to at your home office, making things very complicated and very difficult to keep up manually. Several states are mixed sourcing states, and they let their cities and jurisdictions determine how they want to tax things. Most places are destination-based, but the rest can be very, very complicated and confusing if you're in any of these states. We do a lot of research. This comes actually from Wakefield Research, and they've surveyed accounting professionals, and 70% of them say that their companies conduct sales tax online, yet 39% of accounting professionals don't know all the states where their business has nexus. So nexus is the definition of that as the responsibility of collecting and remitting tax in a certain state or jurisdiction based on how you're doing business there. Do you have salespeople there? Do you have a plant there? Do you have property there? And those nexus laws are constantly changing. One of the things that Avalara does is we can help our customers determine where they might have nexus and get them registered if they need to get registered. It's a very complex thing, and it's always changing. It changes so often that we don't have just a standard set of rules that we can send you. Every time we do one of these, we literally go out to that jurisdiction that's in question and find out what their most current rules are as of today, not last week. These things are changing constantly. So again, not really sure how a sales team, or excuse me, an accounting team at a company that has a lot of things thrown at them every day is able to keep up with this information. So exemptions, as I mentioned earlier, manufacturers and distributors tend to be highly exempt. And I want to just make a clarification here. There's two different types of exempt, the word exemption that we're talking about today. So in that candy bar example, where the milk chocolate candy bar was not taxable and the dark chocolate was, that product is exempt from sales tax. Now we want to talk about the other type of exemption. That's when your customer is exempt from you charging them sales tax because of how they're going to be using your product. They might be reselling it. They might be using it in a manufacturing process. They might be a healthcare or not-for-profit organization. So there are many, many reasons why an organization might be exempt. And this gets super confusing for the customers that we talk to. And in the sales tax world, when you're selling something, you have to either charge that customer tax if that product is taxable, like the dark chocolate candy bar or most other things that we buy, or have an exemption certificate on file from that company that's valid that validates why you are not charging them sales tax. When an auditor comes in, they're going to want to see certain sales invoices and what you charge tax on and what you didn't charge tax on. And if you did not charge a customer tax, they're going to want to see that you had an exemption certificate on file the day that you finalize that invoice. That's what makes you compliant. And this is where most manufacturers and distributors are not in compliance. They might be getting some sales tax rates. They might be zip codes, so they're not correct, but at least they're somewhat close. But this is where the real risk is for your organization. If you sold me $100,000 worth of product and you didn't have an exemption certificate on file, even though you know that company is a reseller or a manufacturer, if you don't have that piece of paper on file, an auditor is going to want all of the sales tax that you should have collected on that invoice. And you either have to take that out of your bank, your savings, or call up that customer and produce a little bit of ill will with them and say, whoops, we didn't charge you, now we need to get that money. And they're not going to be happy about that. So this is really what we're talking about today with most of our NAV customers. A typical ERP tax compliance process for our customers before they automate is they just enter some sales tax rates. I literally talk to customers that they put some sales tax rates in their ERP at some point, maybe 5 years ago when they implemented that system, and then they've never touched them since. They might be taking the time to go in and update those manually, but many aren't. And sometimes they just pick an average rate. I've literally had people say, oh, we just charge everyone a flat rate and hope it covers sales tax, and then we just pay the government whatever we think we should pay them. You're going to obviously see that's going to be a mess when an auditor comes in to try to track everything and get them the right amount of information and make adjustments. And as I said, potentially go out back to your customers and try to collect some of that back sales tax revenue that wasn't remitted originally. So the cost of all of these things that we're talking about is really a great expense to your company. We find that small to medium-sized businesses are spending, anywhere from 32 to 52 hours a year on just administering the tax changes, 66 hours on prep and filing. So all of these things, 302 hours annually, are lost to manual workload. That's almost 2 months of time. So as I mentioned, I have a lot of CFOs who have a lot better things they would like to be doing with their staff's time than filling out forms and researching nexus and changing rates and that sort of thing. And then translating that into dollars, this is again small to medium-sized businesses. Just these things we've been talking about today can cost your company between $60,000 and $70,000 a year. So it's a costly process. Even though we say it's the cost of doing business, there is a better way of doing it. Oops. And these are just a few things that our compliance managers have to do during their day. All of these things, and it just gets crazy. And there might not even be a compliance manager. It might be customer service reps. It might be an accountant. It might be accounts receivable. It could be anybody doing this, and it just really adds up. So now that we've talked about how overwhelming all of that can be, let's talk about how technology can help you. So the three things that Avalara does for NAV customers, and let me just mention that we have an integration with Dynamics NAV. We also have over 500 other integrations. So if your company is using any other systems, perhaps you have a shopping cart on your website, or you've merged with another company that might be using SAP or Sage as their ERP, and you're consolidating that all in the back end. Avalara has over 500 different integrations where we can integrate with an ERP, point of sale, or e-com system, or even a custom application to help you with sales tax compliance. So we're talking specifically about NAV today, but the process works the same if any sales, invoicing or shopping cart or point of sale system. So three main things that we do are we help you calculate tax. So we have a cloud-based environment. This is not a list of rates that we push out to you and you have to do manual uploads every month. We have a cloud-based environment where we keep up with the sales tax rates, rules, and boundaries. We have about 100 people in our compliance department that keep up with the rates. So what we do is we replace your sales tax fields that you have now, where you have to create a tax table for different jurisdictions and assign those tables to your customers. You don't do any of that anymore. We literally replace that field with the word Avatax. And that word Avatax, sorry, back the screen, that word Avatax is what is the integration that I'm talking about, or sometimes you might hear us talk about connectors. And what that does is it makes an API call out to Avatex cloud content. And the first thing we do is check for an exemption certificate. So if that customer is exempt and you have a certificate on file, then we won't return a sales tax rate to that invoice. If you don't have a certificate on file for that customer, then Avatex is going to calculate the appropriate amount of tax for every item on your invoice and return that back onto your customer's invoice. And this happens in the quoting process as well as when you're finalizing an invoice. In that process, we also validate an address. So as a CSR types in an address, or a sales rep or whoever's placing your order, Avalara has to validate that address right down to the lat long, because that's how we calculate sales tax. Remember, this is not zip code based. So we have to know exactly where that address is, where that item is going. So the first thing we do is validate that address, and we return a updated validated address into your system. And then in that process, that's how we determine where that item is and how everything is taxable in that jurisdiction. Every item that was on your invoice, whether it's a product or service or freight or whatever. Avatex also produces amazing reporting. When you use our system, you won't use your sales tax reports out of your NAV system anymore. You'll get them out of Avatex, and they're the best reports you can find out there. As much detail, fine detail as you want, audit trails, we have all of your transactional data is captured through that API call, and that's how we're able to produce that reporting for you. The second thing we do is, as I alluded to, we help you collect, manage, and track exemption certificates. So our cert capture application works in tandem with Avatex. So essentially what you'll do is bring in the exemption certificates that you have now. You'll scan those PDFs right into our cert capture system, attach them to a customer, and then the next time that customer places an order with you, Avatex is going to know that there's a valid certificate on file, and so it won't assess sales tax on that invoice. If for some reason that certificate is expired, about 20% of them expire out there, or you don't have one on file, or you've set it to expire after, say, 4 or 5 years just so you can keep up with compliance, then we are going to return a sales tax rate. So this makes you be 100% compliant with those exemption certificates. Our customers can't argue with you, no questions asked. The law says I have to have the certificate on file, or I have to charge you sales tax. And then because we have all of that information, the third thing we do is we can actually complete your sales tax returns for you. Because you're passing that invoice information through our cloud-based environment, we're keeping the invoice information, enough of it to be able to complete your sales tax returns. And most people will tell me, oh, it doesn't take me very long to do these returns. But if you think about it, if you go back to my chart earlier, what it takes to complete these returns, you have to run reports in multiple systems, you have to go on multiple websites, write checks or set up payments, double check things. It's error prone, and it is way more time consuming than you think it is. And what our system does is it automatically completes those returns. As part of the setup process, you go in and tell us what sales tax returns you're required to file. You set up a filing calendar, and that's how we know when to complete those. We literally complete a lot of them without even touching them. Some we still have people in our compliance department filling them out, but we complete the forms on your behalf with all of that transactional data. You go in and do a quick reconciliation, and then we actually send the forms and the revenue out to those jurisdictions for you. You'll send us one ACH payment for everything that's due that month to every jurisdiction, and we'll do the actual remittance of the forms and payments for you at that time. And then the last thing that's not really on my slide here that I wanted to mention, and I did mention this when we were talking about Nexus earlier, is we do have an amazing professional services tax advisory team. We're not tax attorneys, although we do have a lot of tax accountants on staff, but we help you answer some of these questions that you might have regarding your company's compliance. Where do you have Nexus? Where should we get registered? We can help you get registered. A lot of manufacturers are going into the e-com business now, and they've never charged tax before, and they need help figuring out how to do that and where to charge tax and how to get registered. Maybe unregistered if you have a salesperson no longer in a specific state. we can help you with all of those things and help you be able to make better business decisions. So it's a great company, end-to-end tax compliance. Hopefully that's helpful. We did cover the exemption certificates, but specifically I just want to have the slide here, and this deck is available to you through this session just to remind you of the exemption certificate process and how valuable that is and how we can help you manage that. So this is the process that I explained. Here's our cloud-based content. Here are your multiple ERP invoice processing systems. When you take an order in your system, it calls out to the cloud, calculates tax, returns that onto your invoice. We take that data and put it onto those sales tax returns and then remit that out to the company. So that's how Avalara works. So thank you so much for your time. Please let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Maria. And as a reminder to everyone on the call, if you do have a question, feel free to type that into the questions or the chat area of the GoToWebinar Council. And Maria, I am showing a few questions pending. The first question is, do I have to change any of my current Microsoft NAV processes to use Avalara?
Oh, good question. No, because Avalara just replaces that sales tax field, it doesn't affect the invoicing process whatsoever. It's just going to calculate the tax for you so that nobody has to go in and keep up with sales tax rates. But otherwise, the processing of an invoice remains exactly the same. And if I didn't mention, Avalara also will calculate sales tax in the quoting process. So as soon as you start an order, whether you're going to finalize it today or not, you're able to calculate that sales tax all the way along. So if you're doing quotes for a customer or if someone is online and wants to see the sales tax on what they're buying, it'll assess that tax all the way through, and then it'll do the final commit when you, and the final assessment of sales tax when you commit that invoice.
Great, thank you. I've got 2 additional questions so far, and as a reminder, keep them coming in. If you have them, happy to answer. We do still have 5 minutes remaining. So Maria, the next question I do have is, when taxability rules or tax boundaries change, do I need to do anything to update my tax schedules?
No, so you won't be keeping up those tax schedules at all anymore. As I mentioned, Avalara, hold on, let me go back to my little cloud slide here. This little cloud here is where all of our content people keep up with the rates, rules, and boundaries. We literally have relationships with all the individual jurisdictions out there, all 12,000 of them out there, and we keep those up in a cloud-based environment. So there's nothing for you to change on your side. If something changed, say as of January 1, we'll have that rate automatically in our system and ready for use when you process sales on January 1. So we do take all that work off of your plate.
Great, and I've got another question. How does this work for AP when assessing use tax?
That's a great question too. So use taxes, there is a use tax element that you can add on. So remember I talked about the connection or the integration between AvaTax and Dynamics Navision. We can calculate tax for you as we've been talking about today, but we also have a connection for NAV for the AP side. So we can help you calculate tax on those invoices where you want to self-remit tax. If you bought something without paying tax on the invoice and you have a few things you want to self-assess use tax, we do have an integration with NAV's AP side and can calculate that tax for you and of course incorporate all of that information in the sales tax returns when we prepare those for you.
Great, thank you. And we'll give the attendees a few more minutes. I'm not currently showing any other questions pending in the queue. So I'll take this time just as a reminder that we will be sending out a follow-up to today's webinar, including a PDF of the presentation that Maria shared today, as well as a link to the recording. And Abby will also have that posted up on the website for your viewing as well. So I'm not seeing any other questions in the queue. So Maria, Abby, I'll let you guys wrap that up.
Great. Well, thanks so much for your time today. And Abby, thanks for having us on. We really appreciate it. If anyone wants to see how this would work specifically in your environment, just reach out to Abby and she'll get a hold of us and we'll schedule a call with you and provide a demonstration.
And I'm just here to back that up. We thank everybody for attending today, and we're excited about our Avalara Innovia team, and we look forward to continuing to partner together to serve you, our customers, even better.